April 1945. 2 million Soviet soldiers close a steel fist around Adolf Hitler's last prize, Berlin. In 11 days, the Third Reich's capital will fall, but not before the city pays in blood, rubble, and a truth-bending photograph that will circle the world. As the Red Army massed on the Oder, the two dictators studied maps and dreamed in opposite directions. Adolf Hitler still clung to a miracle. He pictured General Walter Wenck's 12th Army resting on the Elbe, wheeling east to smash through American lines, link up with the encircled 9th Army, and punch a corridor into Berlin. If his Armee Wenck could arrive, and if the Western Allies quarreled with the Soviets, the capital might be saved, at least on paper in the bunker. Joseph Stalin wanted no such pause. Berlin was the political jackpot of the war. On April 16, 1945, he unleashed a competition. Marshal Georgy Zhukov's First Belarusian Front would storm in from the north. Marshal Ivan Konev's First Ukrainian Front would strike from the south. The first commander to reach the Reichstag would plant the red banner and claim the glory. Stalin's prize was symbolic. Capture Berlin and you owned the victory, along with the bargaining table for post-war Europe. By mid-April 1945, the battlefield around Berlin was brutally one-sided. Marshal Zhukov and Marshal Konev massed more than 2.5 million Red Army soldiers in 3 fronts encircling the city. They rolled forward with about 6,250 tanks and self-propelled guns, and a staggering 41,600 artillery pieces, enough barrels to place one gun every few yards along the assault line. Facing them were roughly 300,000 German defenders, frontline troops mixed with Volkssturm militia, Hitler Youth teenagers, and exhausted SS remnants. Berlin could field fewer than 1,000 armored vehicles, many sitting idle for lack of fuel or shells, and just 9,000 anti-aircraft and field guns. In the air, the imbalance was even worse. The Red Air Force, backed by non-stop Allied bombing, ruled the sky, while the shriveled Luftwaffe had under 1,000 flyable planes left in all of Germany. Berlin, in short, was outgunned roughly 10-1. But the city's choke points, its bridges, canals, and deep subway tunnels promised to make every Soviet yard a fight bought with blood. April 21, 1945. Berlin wakes to what diaries call a drum fire, 40,000 Soviet guns hammering the suburbs every 10 seconds. People haul mattresses into U-Bahn tunnels. Families sleep on rails beside posters that still promise victory. Shell bursts shatter water mains, so women line up at broken hydrants, filling saucepans while shrapnel clinks off the pavement. The dead lie where they fall, sometimes stacked behind makeshift barricades of doors and sandbags. In the stairwells, the whispered warning spreads, "Russen kommen! The Russians are coming." One anonymous note, dated April 23rd, reads on the shaking page, "Every window pane shakes." We count the seconds. Shells land closer. The walls breathe dust. For the men of Zhukov and Konev, Berlin is an objective. For the 2 million civilians underground, it is a cage filling with rubble and fear. Inside the Führer bunker, Hitler still believed in a last-minute rescue. He ordered General Walter Wenck's 12th Army, a scratch force of cadets and convalescents on the Elbe, to wheel east toward Berlin, while the battered 9th Army fought northwest out of the Soviet encirclement, southeast of the city. On April 24th, Wenck did punch through 20 miles of Soviet lines, reaching the forests outside Potsdam, but found only refugee columns and wounded grenadiers, not the steel to break a 1,000,000-man ring. Realizing Berlin was lost, Wenck turned southwest, ferried tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians across the Elbe to American lines at Tangermünde, and surrendered. In the bunker, Hitler was still tracing arrows on a map, but his so-called Joker never reached the table, let alone the city he was meant to save. Berlin did not fall only to artillery. It fell to rage. Soviet NKVD investigations later estimated about 100,000 rapes in the city between April 24th and mid-May. Berlin clinics kept treating victims through the summer. Some hospitals recorded up to 1,000 new cases a day in the first week. Looting followed the violence. Pianos, sewing machines, even chandeliers clattered on horse carts. One eyewitness saw Persian carpets strapped over a T-34 turret like victory banners. Soviet headquarters tried to stem the chaos. On April 27, 1945, Marshal Zhukov signed an order threatening court-martial for rape or theft. Some frontline officers enforced it, shooting offenders on the spot. Many more looked the other way. Why the fury? 4 years of Nazi terror in the East, burned villages, massacred families, had seared its own appetite for revenge. Yet in Berlin, vengeance landed on the innocent as often as on the guilty. For thousands of women, the fall of the Third Reich became the beginning of another kind of occupation, one engraved not in concrete, but in memory. April 29, 1945. Deep in the Führer bunker, the dictator who had promised a 1,000-year Reich signs a marriage certificate. Adolf Hitler, 56, weds Eva Braun, 33, in a candle-lit cement corridor. Minutes later, he dictates a new political testament, denouncing Hermann Göring and Heinrich Himmler as traitors for negotiating behind his back. He leaves what remains of Germany to Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, April 30th, about 3:30 p.m. Braun bites a cyanide capsule. Hitler shoots himself with his Walther. SS aides wrap the bodies in blankets, carry them up the bunker stairs, douse them with gasoline, and set them alight in the Reich Chancellery Garden, while Soviet shells burst overhead. Bunker command now falls to General Helmuth Weidling. That night, he radios Soviet lines asking for a ceasefire. Berlin will lay down its arms. The war Hitler began ends for him not in triumph, but in smoke and shallow cratered soil. May 2nd, 1945, 6 a.m. In a ruined Berlin schoolhouse, General Helmuth Weidling signs the city's capitulation. His staff cars are gone, so he bicycles to Soviet lines to surrender in person. That same afternoon, Soviet war photographer Yevgeny Kalday climbs the Reichstag with 3 infantrymen and a red cloth he has sewn into a flag. The real combat banner of the 150th Rifle Division had been planted 2 nights earlier under sniper fire, but no one caught the moment on film. Kalday wants a picture the world can print. He poses the soldiers, snaps several frames, then notices one trooper wearing 2 wristwatches, clear evidence of looting. Before the image reaches Pravda, an editor airbrushes away the extra watch and darkens the smoke for drama. When newspapers hit the streets, millions see victory distilled to a single heroic silhouette. Yet even that triumph carries its own footnote in propaganda. The flag was real. The fall of Berlin was real. But the photograph, like so much of war, was carefully arranged for history's eye. The victory was absolute, the bill staggering. In the Berlin offensive, the Red Army counted about 81,000 killed and 280,000 wounded, casualties greater than many entire campaigns. The German side lost roughly 92,000 soldiers and an estimated 220,000 civilians. while 480,000 men and boys marched into Soviet captivity. The city itself was a moonscape. 3 out of every 4 buildings lay in rubble. 1.7 million Berliners were suddenly homeless. In June 1945, official rations dropped below 800 calories a day. Bread crusts, watery soup, the occasional potato from a bomb crater. Politically, the fall of Berlin closed one war and lit the fuse for the next. Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill had already agreed to slice the capital into 4 occupation zones: Soviet, American, British, and French. Those pencil lines hardened fast. By June 1948, the Soviets sealed all land routes, forcing Western aircraft to feed the city in the first great drama of the Cold War, the Berlin airlift. The human aftermath is harder to measure. Mass graves along the canals, diaries never finished, and decades of argument over rape, revenge, and responsibility. Berlin's fall ended Hitler's Reich, but opened a new frontier, a divided city at the heart of a divided world. From a dictator's bunker to a doctored flag on a shattered roof, the Battle of Berlin shows how victory and horror can share the same streets and even the same photograph. If this video added something to your understanding of history, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more.